When customers come into the Bell branch, I would like them to know that it's not just a place they can do their banking. They can come laugh with us, cry with us, pray with us. We want to be their friend, not just their bankers. My name is Courtney Frazier, and I'm the Bell branch manager. Happy Banking is different because our level of customer service that we offer to our customers and the personal relationships that we develop with our customers.
$72.52, please. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Ordinance 7252 is an amendment to a plan development up here at the old school building that was once the Goodwill building.
What was the name of that school?
Wilson.
I remember going down that
Wilson.
slide when I was a little kid. That metal
You went there?
second floor slide.
It's not
But
that.
I remember the name of this.
I've been racking my brain. Wilson,
I
okay.
think it's on the door.
Is it?
It's still over the door.
You're doing
Yeah,
60.
castings
Is
is
that the one
over.
Well, you actually have to go around and drive down 17th
Well, that's
Street.
elementary.
I'm gonna
So
use
it's
it around
track.
Out there in the back, that's where kids in track for elementary school kids.
Sorry.
They had the old fire escape. What's going on? It was a slide, you climb up it backwards.
Yeah, we did that at one.
George?
Yeah,
What's happening, sir?
Anyway, this is an amendment. Again, the facility now belongs to Apex, and they are wanting to make some changes. The original plan development was put in place specifically for Goodwill, so it was pretty narrow, as to what could and could not be done. One of the things Apex is wanting to do is to add some storage buildings in the back, which would be to the north. They're also putting in some significant screening, some improvements to make the back end of that building look a lot better. Early on, there had been some comments from the neighborhood. I understand those have all been addressed, and now that the amendment has been proposed, the amendment has satisfied all of the neighborhood comments. So it's going, both planning and zoning commission and the residents seem to be in favor of the amendment. And the expert's back, so if we have any questions, we can ask him.
This misfiring permit, I'm assuming that that's why that steel is up. Okay.
This was a true compromise between the city and the property owners and everybody to make the situation.
And the neighbors.
That's great work. How long has that been in the works? It had went to PNC first, or did it?
Before we went to the planning and zoning commission last week, we've been working on it probably, 4 months.
Wow. Interesting process these things go through. Okay, 7253, please.
7253 is a vacation with some rights of way. This is the little triangular strip of land on the north side of I-40, just back west from I-40 and Grant. That's where T-Anchor would come up and intersect with the Furlong Road through there. This would potentially allow for that property that's really been isolated for many, many years to be redeveloped and put something good on it.
Do we know what's going to be put on there? No, not yet.
Not at this point, we're just trying to consolidate the land to try to do something.
And you would note that the applicant is paying the fair market value of what they're asking to have vacated back to.
Is that in the drainage area at all, where all that water?
It's up pretty high over there.
So Seminole Street, does it go all the way through now, or does it turn right and go get access to Interstate 40?
It's dead ends.
Dead ends into that piece?
That entire area is vacant. It's a vacant field.
So what are the two white pieces? I see the crosshatch, but what are the other two white pieces? Is that part of it, or? I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out.
The white pieces are the part that are not
Right.
right of way.
The white pieces are part of the lots that were planted
Planted
property.
property.
All right.
Any other question?
I'll abstain from that one.
Oh, okay.
Free.
Guys, Jim's abstaining. Okay, resolution.
Mayor, item number 4 is one that Mr. Frigo and Mr. Floyd Hartman, utility boys, have been working on our behalf. If you'll recall, about 6 months ago, we applied for another round of state funding to make the pipeline connection from Arden Road back to the Osage potable water treatment plant. We did not receive that funding. Dean has identified another potential source. This would be grant funding to the tune of about $15 million, and we would match with $5 million of local money to do the same project. Now, the good thing is that $5 million, if we were to receive the grant, would actually come out of the underspend money on the Potter County well fees. So it's money we've already bought and paid for, so to speak. Truly, it's going to be difficult to get this program that the feds are funding on this grant basis is only going to be $40 million total.
No.
And we're asking for 15 of it. But we're really, rapidly kind of running up to the point between the unspent contingency money that's in the Potter County project and then the underspends that we're getting from the really good bids. There's going to be significant funds left over in that, and we may ultimately have to refund them. However, since all that's at 2.09%, if we can find a better way to use that money, we'll keep working on it. But we would sure like to take a crack at getting this one.
Who makes this decision?
This comes through the Texas Water Development Board of Las Vegas.
Yeah, it goes through.
Okay.
David,
But it's federal funding.
it's federal money, but it's administered by state.
Okay, great. Well, if we don't get the funding, what will we do?
We'll keep looking for better and other opportunities to apply it.
Yeah. Okay, we have another resolution here.
Mayor, item number 5, second resolution. This is denying SPS's proposed interruptible service tariffs. I'll let Marcus brief you on this one, but would note that we are doing this in accordance with a request from SPS to deny these. So,
that's correct. We'll just pick up on that thought. There are, give or take, 60 cities in the Panhandle and the SPS service area, and their preference is for all cities to deny it so that they can consolidate all the proceedings in one case, the PUC in Austin, hash it all out one time with the lawyers and experts, and get a single ruling for all the service area rather than having 60 rulings for 60 cities, 60 tweaks, 60 presentations, and that type of thing.
Now, is this for commercial or residential or both?
This is strictly for commercial. In fact, it's strictly for the largest commercial
Industrial.
accounts. The heaviest large transmission service customers. There are 2 very similar changes they're asking for. One is a summer-only interruptible where a large company can sign up with SPS and agree that during the summertime you can cut my electrical load because of the residences and others increasing their loads like on a summer evening. And in return for me letting you cut my electricity at my business, you give me some credits on my electric bill. The other one works very similarly, except it's not limited to summertime. It's an interruptible that may arise during a winter storm, other extreme weather, forced outages. If we had down power lines, transmission lines in the area, making it difficult for SPS to service loads, then they go to these other customers on this other tariff, and they've agreed in advance to reduce their loads and receive a credit from SPS. That is it in a nutshell. We think there are 3 issues presented by this SPS proposal, and they are the issues we will hash out at the PUC if you deny this. One is the very question of should it be limited only to the large transmission service customers.
Didn't we do this for residential a couple of years ago?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did, exactly. The residences have had this.
Do you know what success they had on getting residential customers to accept it, to sign up? Or whatever?
I do not.
Not that it has any bearing on this.
I can follow up. It's a good question, but I do not know. The city itself asked the question, why limit to the large transmission companies? Perhaps there's some cost savings available to municipalities, school districts, colleges in our area. Just to again take a hypothetical example, if this were available to a college, during the summertime, they might be very willing to have their load interrupted because there's such little use of the campus during the summer. The second issue that we would explore, SPS states in their application that it is not requesting recovery of the cost of the program in this proceeding. That begs the question, is there another proceeding, is there another pocket we're going to look for that money from? And so we want to explore that with the company at the PUC. And then the third issue, the company has also requested that it be able to recover the cost of these credits as a fuel expense in a fuel reconciliation proceeding. And it's not clear to us that this qualifies for a fuel reconciliation proceeding. We'll debate that with them at the PUC and see what the ruling is. Those are the three primary issues that we would raise at the PUC. This case does qualify for a reimbursement. The City of Amarillo fronts the money for legal expenses and experts for panhandle cities under our coalition. But as those bills come in monthly, we pay them monthly, we send them over to the company, and the company is required to reimburse us. This is a reimbursable expense under state law. So there is no net cost to the city. The cost, as it is, comes back through electric rates. This is not expected to be a prolonged or highly expensive case. I don't have a precise dollar estimate, but in talking to our Austin council, while there's three issues, they should be fairly easy to address in a straightforward way. So we would recommend that you adopt the resolution denying the SPS tariff applications.
How do they actually meet? Have satellite control of the meter?
They do.
You turn them on and off?
They do. They come out, and if your company were to sign up for it, if you were qualified, then they would install a device on your meter. It's a radio control signal kind of thing. That's exactly what they do.
They provide a certain notice, and then they get a step down until you get to the degree level. An example would have been this summer, when they had one generating unit down for service, and then they lost a second unit. Well, that wasn't voluntary. They were coming through asking all the heavy users, please come down so that we don't end up going offline. This is a better and more preemptive way to try to manage that.
And of course, another benefit to this kind of program, it tends to delay the need for new electric distribution. Generation. Thank you. I was thinking manufacturing. I couldn't get the right word. New electric generation for your summer peak loads. You can just reduce the load. You don't have to go to a new power plant or go buy a power spark plug. So that's the one of the benefits of the program.
Are there any steps that can be taken to go back to natural gas for their power instead of coal?
They were supposed to, weren't they?
I will find out for you.
Was that not the case that they were going to
What I
do
re-
80% or 75%?
Well, what I'm recalling, and it may not be accurate, Commissioner, is that they were going to spend some significant money upgrading the efficiency of their coal plants. There were some efficiency factors there, but I'll find out about the gas. I'm not recalling that off.
The Jones plant was going to be gas.
Yeah.
The second Jones plant.
The one in Austin, the one in
One in-
Lover.
Yeah. It's going to be a gas plant.
Yeah, because that's what I remember.
Gas plants are cheaper and easier to keep in compliance. They're cheaper to construct and easier to keep in compliance. I don't know that their total net cost is less.
I'll refresh my memory and get an update on that.
But in the supply, a whole lot more plentiful. That's cheaper, right?
A whole lot more plentiful and much less interrupted. The big thing we had 3-4 summers ago when the rail line was out, and they weren't able to keep the stockpiles full coming out of Wyoming.
That'd be a green thing.
Yeah, they really would, and I appreciate you.
No, not at all.
I don't know why they don't do it. I guess that's why they're public utility.
Mayor, if we could, we could run through the consent agenda, come back to the
Yeah.
public hearing, and leave all the time that we need to discuss that in
I'll
preparation.
put that at the last on the agenda. Okay.
Item A, we purchased some medical supplies used by our first responders. These are this is an antidote that replaces existing antidotes that are in our stockpile and that have expired. Funding for this and funding for the one immediately below it are grant dollars from the federal government through the Metropolitan Medical Response Program, MMRS.
Okay.
Is something done with these out of date or out of, well, they're dated?
They're dated.
I know. Can there anything be, some third world country or something, are they just trashed?
It's a good question. I don't know what we do with them. This is the first time we've had any of these long enough to have expired. And I can tell you what we do with the ones on the next. I don't know about the meds.
Well, it's not want none.
Okay, the high water pump repair. Oh, well, you briefly talked about that.
Item B is a follow-up to the
Yeah.
first one. Rather than purchasing antidotes here, we're actually just purchasing the filter canister that goes on the gas mask that we have throughout some of the first response vehicles. These old ones are either used for training or destroyed. Once these are cracked open, they have a lifespan and they have to go away.
I find it interesting that I think how many fire stations have where they put the oxygen in the tanks?
We have three.
Three. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I'd never even thought about how you get oxygen in the tanks. Three specific stations that do that.
We have three sets of the compressors that are used to charge those bottles, yes. We just bought one new one over the summer.
Compressor.
Can I fill my scuba tanks?
Scuba, you know, scuba.
Sharks.
Okay, the tax abatement for Zargus.
The item D, Mayor, is tax abatement agreement for Zargus Tubesca, known as Zargus. This is the second of the two big wind energy projects that AEDC brought to you over the course of the year. They have asked for, and staff is recommending, your standard 10-year abatement. Zargus is working on about an 80,000 square foot facility. If you were to go to Centerport, it's immediately south of the existing Benny Keith warehouse that's out there. So I believe Mr. Tim Daniels, representing Zargus, will be here, as will probably Brian Jennings from AEDC. Buzz is going to be.
Okay. Great. Let's see. Okay, so this, oh boy, this is great, isn't it? Number 8.
I think number eight's a good deal. Chief's here to kind of walk through with us an opportunity we have to add 6 police officers to the current staffing. This would be in lieu of the 6 officers that we attempted to get through the COPS grant program, which was actually a program that we reapplied for at their request, and I think actually did worse on the reapplication than we did the first time. So I'm not sure that that's a program that's going to work out for us much in the future. But we do have, we did budget both for this year and program for the following year capital funding that would have been used had we gotten these 6 officers. Asked the chief to find a way to come up with 3 out of his pocket, and we would add 3 from the general fund pocket, and he has done so. So I'll let him tell us about it.
Well, honestly, the city manager was gracious enough to give us $180,000 out of the increased revenue from sales tax returns, so that's half of it. And the other 3 funding will come out of our overtime budget. We'll transfer that money to our salary account permanently, and then that'll fund the other place. It's about $360,000 per 6 officers. The capital project is enough money to pay for all their equipment. We plan on buying 1 extra patrol car and then upgrading 4 of our detective cars to what we call a Group 108 car, which is an interceptor car. It's an unmarked.
Well, I think something that's the chief and his staff have done in putting this together that's just just very good, I think, for all of us. The COPS grant, we would have structured those 6 officers out through 3 different programs. Knowing the limits that we have on us and just attempting to get the staffing, the chief and his folks have put together a deal. These will be 6 patrol officers. He is being very frugal with that capital money, only adding 1 car and upgrading 4 existing ones. That should leave a small amount of that capital funding that we can carry over into the following year. If y'all agree with this, transferring 3 men's worth of his overtime into his salary and transferring roughly $180,000 from the overage and the sales tax, we'll put that into his salary line item, increase the staffing by 6. You'll be able to get those guys this year, put them in the academy. When we begin next year's budget, we won't have to come back and fight again for that money. It will be there, and those will be fully funded positions, even though truly you'll only pay 1/4 of that in the current year, just based on the academy starting in June. So,
I think this is so
really appreciate them working to get this done for us.
Absolutely. And so they will start in June, and then they'll be on the street.
Roughly about 9 months later, going through the academy through the FTO program, and they'll end up on what we call our tax shift, which is that area between midnights and evenings and midnights.
Right.
4 men end up on that tax shift, and 2 will end up on midnights.
But they're going, this will all be at the patrol level.
Right.
No,
Sergeants, no.
They all
Detectives.
start here,
No
don't they?
new detectives.
All start here. And they have to take the civil service
Yes.
to promote. What will this mean for Amarillo, adding some additional officers for this year? And truly, I'd like to see it every budget year to add some. It's so important.
Well, you know, it's the impact of the 6 officers out in the field is not going to be real great, but it will help. You know, I've mentioned before, you know, that the amount of time that the officers are tied up on doing something has increased from 50% back in the 80s up to close to 90+% now. So it's just going to require more officers to do the same work we did back then. And that's why, you know, right now we're having a lot of good success with our cops officers and direct patrol. A lot of that's on overtime. But using that tactic can bring you down the crime rate. Right now we're kind of projecting it's going to be down about 4% for October.
That's right.
And, you know, that's pretty good since it was up to 7% last year. So we're making some good progress there. And being able to have enough officers to do that without overtime and then using the overtime for special events like Christmas patrol and stuff like that would be a better use. I don't think we're ever going to get away from using overtime for direct patrol, but we still have got to have more officers.
Absolutely. And that's our #1 job is security of our citizens, is to make sure they stay safe. And as we grow, we're going to, I really think we ought to look at it every budget year and make sure that that happens.
We'll need to, as we've discussed in the past, fire services are geographically based, and you can kind of catch up to that and position yourself and step back a little. Police is population based, and the growth of the police department has not historically kept up with the growth of the size of the city. So, the chief and his folks have worked on giving us some projections, showing us some samples of when the target or the directed patrol has been used and the impact it had. We'll try to distill that down and have it very, very early in the budget process for us to be looking at for the 11-12 budget and see what we can do. But we all are right on track. We certainly need the boots on the street, the patrolmen, but we'll also have to begin increasing all the supervisory ranks as well as the detectives. For really, one group breeds work for another. So try to get all of them to move together.
where are we on this number, this standard that's used in police departments across the country, the number of officers per population?
I believe we're around 1.6 or so, pretty close to there. Well,
Target is 2?
We would like to be 2,000.
So isn't that accepted
It
recommendation?
depends on the locality. I mean, New York was 4.5, but you got to look at how much crime is there and all the commerce and everything close to run that city. Others are less than that. It just depends on the crime rate and how much you want to try to control that, the more you want to try to control that, the more people tax.
So we're at what number?
I believe it's about 1.6. It's either a little more than that or just a little less, but right around there.
And that's something that as you move that metric upward, you'll want to watch and see what your crime stats are doing. You know, it could be a point of diminishing returns. I don't think we're anywhere close to it yet.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
ultimately,
I think
So how many officers,
Yeah,
if you moved it a tenth of a point, how many officers would that be? That'd go to 1.7.
You know, my finance class wasn't all that good.
Well, that would imply you're 20% down from where you should be. If he's at 1.6, you're trying to get to 2. You're 20%
And
down.
that would be about, if we guess the Amarillo population is 200,000, 2 per thousand is 80 more officers than we got right now. So a point might be about 15 guys.
So you are good.
That's
I'm
good.
going to say it'd be 20 to raise it one full 10.
Yeah.
What percent of the officers are on the street, in the black and whites, would you say?
I don't know the percent, it's 200 and something.
On the street.
So, I mean, the
But
bulk of
that's
the
in
officers.
3 shifts.
Yes, the bulk of the officers are on the street.
4 shifts. In fact, when it comes
The
to
other
the
way
tax
around.
shift.
And the tax shift is what allows you to have the depth of coverage as you run through the evening and nighttime hours, especially on the weekends.
I think if you go through the Citizens Police Academy, I think most of us have here. I've talked to folks that just got through. They think it's amazing all that you get
No,
done.
Mayor, I think only you and I.
Oh, really?
I thought
You've
Ryan
been
had.
to-
Yeah, Ryan
Good
had.
boy, okay, oh, race.
But it's a great program. It's a great program.
Yes,
And
it
people
is.
can see how much you all do. Right now, do you have any at the FBI Academy?
No, but Terry Leakey will be going in January.
Yeah. Y'all do a great job. You just really a great force, department. Thank you. And I'm glad we can do that. It's great.
Did you have a presentation or something up there?
No?
No, that'll be for your public
Oh,
hearing.
I thought it was the chief, and I was impressed.
Mayor, if you'd like, this could be briefly run through tonight at your commission meeting. If that seems to be agreeable when we're finished with that, the chief can begin the process of adding these folks to his recruitment for the current academy.
Awesome.
It will start in June. I think we will need to come back with an ordinance to adjust his authorized strength, presuming all this goes well tonight. We can sure do that.
Do you ever pursue 2 academies a year?
Yes. Well, that depends on, of course.
That'd be his
Law.
dream to
Yeah,
see
dream.
2 academies per year.
June seems a long way away.
I mean, but of course, right now would be too late to try to do one in January, just because of all that it takes to get one of these going.
Really?
If you wanted to do, and we'll plan on doing 2 next year, kind of, in preparation, hopefully in the next budget year, if we get some more. But we've got to start in June to plan one for January.
So that's every week. Is that right?
The
Citizens.
citizens, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
for 12 weeks.
12 night a week.
It's great. It's really.
And you don't have
If
to.
I can pack heat, I'll do it.
Becky.
You get to shoot.
You can get tased.
You get to shoot.
Is it tasered or tased? Which is the right word? Tasered or tased?
It's no thank you, man.
Hey,
Only.
Y'all didn't have a
only
video
Paul
when Harpo
Harpo.
screened, did y'all? Well, you got-
Rumor is there's not a video.
I've
There is
seen
too.
it.
I've seen it.
I've seen it.
I need that when
I
he
was
runs
there.
for future.
I was there. And I thought, I'm serving with the fool.
Mayor, if you'd like, we can move on to discussing
Okay. Thank
Wait a
you.
minute, I'm not done. I want to talk about.
Oh, it's great. You need to do
Okay.
it. We'll sign him up. Great, thank you.
Final
Okay.
item on your agenda would be the preparation for your public hearing tonight on the design standards as they relate to the single-family properties. Got a set of handouts here for you. What I thought we would suggest, we'll have Kelly kind of go over. We'll have Kelly kind of go over the handouts that he has here. He does have these prepared to put up on the screen. We would use, more Kelly? We would use this session at the moment as a reference and resource for y'all. So feel free to stop and ask any questions, any suggestions that you may have. And then tonight for the hearing, we could possibly begin that by letting Kelly basically go through the same presentation and then turn it back to y'all, where you could solicit from the audience, those who were in favor, those who were not in favor, their comments, and then if they could, maybe give us, some ideas of why. Staff can then transcribe everything that we get from tonight, have that prepared to bring back to y'all as discussion only. Again, tonight is discussion only, it's not an action item. We can bring you back those comments and thoughts, and we can discuss them in future work sessions and ultimately decide whether or what we need to do to work on these or if we even have it possible. So with that, Kelly, got a map to start you out with, kind of explain some of the different zones and boundaries that are being discussed interchangeably. And we wanted to make the point they're not, we just wanted to show them. So, Kelly?
What I wanted to do is first start out by going over the actual tiered boundaries and, well, actually the different boundaries that are out there. We have the tax increment reinvestment zone boundary. And then we have the downtown Amarillo Urban Design District boundary. And then within that downtown Amarillo Urban Design District boundary, we also have what's identified in the document as a single-family neighborhood design standard boundary. And so what this map shows are those three boundaries, because in some of the public hearings and everything, sometimes these boundaries are thrown about in different conversations, and I just think it's important to remember that the tiers boundary, which is signified by the blue line here, the downtown urban design standards and its boundary has nothing to do with the tax increment reinvestment zone boundary. It just happens to be within it, but it has no relationship to it, other than being one of the goals that was outlined in the strategic action plan, which also mentions the terms. But it's important to remember that the tax increment reinvestment zone boundary has nothing to do with the design standards. So that's what this map is trying to show. The next map that I had to do these by hyperlinks, because when I tried to copy PDFs into these slides, they just looked horrible. So it takes just a little bit of time.
Thank God for hyperlinks.
I don't know what he said either.
Which can now be made available on your telephone.
Not mine.
I think it's also important to remember that the downtown design district standards, whether you're in the larger district or the smaller single-family design district, the standards that are within those boundaries only apply to characteristics of structures. It doesn't deal with land use per se. Land use is still dictated and governed by the actual zoning of whichever area you're in. And as you can see by this map, we have several different types of boundaries. We have the central business district zoning, which allows pretty much everything, but you also have quite a bit of commercial type, heavy commercial, light commercial, and then you also have a lot of planned developments within which the zoning standards that apply to that is specific to that planned development, and you're familiar with planned developments. But then also we have a lot of multifamily too, and the majority of the single family boundary is zoned multifamily too. So if you're wanting, if somebody asks, well, can I put a business in this area right here? Does the design standards prevent me from doing that? No, it doesn't. But the zoning does. The multifamily 2 zoning prohibits businesses opening up in that. So I just wanted to point out that zoning, the underlying zoning of the district, is still very important when you're talking about what is allowed as far as land uses.
Of course, your example of someone saying, can I put a business in this location? And the answer is no, because of zoning. But yet they can make application and ask for an exception.
They can.
What?
Yeah, that's why some of these planned developments right here, those are, there's a few attorneys' offices over there. There's a couple of photography studios over there.
Those are actually, sorry?
Some institutionals?
Some institutionals. Those were requests that weren't allowed outright by the multifamily zoning, but by use of the planned development, along with, additional development standards that are specific to the site. They may or may not be appropriate, but could it be approved that way?
And those had to be approved one by the commission.
Yes.
Well, and as an example, one of the big one there at the corner is the one that you're looking at today, is the
The old school,
revised
11.
plan development for the Apex property, which is
Right there above PD
It's
198A.
right, actually it's right here.
It's right there.
And if your efforts stop at this point, if we rely on your underlying zoning, you of course have the planned developments as you just discussed. But you also have within, for example, the multifamily 2 area, the green, whatever color that is, your specific use permit process, which is the process that has, in that neighborhood, legally resulted in the one manufactured home that's over there. That was brought to a previous commission for a specific use and was approved. And I would presume, although we didn't have time to look it up, that a specific use permit is how we got the metal building.
I don't think the metal building, I think the metal building is right here, which is in the PD, which will allow the retail. And this doesn't show the this map only shows the PDs, it doesn't show the specific use permit.
So that's where you existed prior to the implementation of the downtown urban design standards. Your next step above what was there, and I guess, Kelly, stop me if I'm getting all over your presentation. Under that, as you saw prior to the adoption of this in July, that area was handled the same as any other area in town subject to its underlying zoning. To build a building, you came in and got a building permit, your plans were reviewed and accepted. They were reviewed only as far as the extent of what are your building codes and what's the existing zone. So permits have always been required, just as they are anywhere else within the incorporated boundaries. When the design standard overlay was put on top of that, what you added was a requirement then, basically for consistency, where one property would have to remain consistent with the neighboring properties. It would be, in my opinion, that would be something that would put an end to the process of a specific use permit, for example, a manufactured home to go in. That would not then be consistent with the character of that neighborhood. It's just an example of where those cut and where those override. Kelly, you want to go a little further with that?
Well, that's actually one of the examples I was going to use, that if you didn't have the design standards, you could follow the specific use permit or the planned development process, and that's what is allowed zoning-wise, to do other things in this neighborhood. And pending the approval of those, you could place a mobile home there, for example. The design standards, again, just adds that. It adds that one extra step of review that is that consistent with the overall characteristics of the neighborhood type of thing. And the design standards, the answer to that would be no. Mobile home would not be consistent with this neighborhood, so that would be denied, although you would have the ability to appeal that to the design review board, appeal it to the zoning board of adjustments if you didn't agree with that. So there is an appeal process, but that's just an example of something that you could do, or the difference in what you could do given just straight zoning and design standards. Is there any question about that at all? It's a lot.
You're going to do that similar presentation. That'd be nice.
And this was just to reiterate that point, that even without the design district, the downtown Amarillo urban design district, there still was a building permit process that you had to go through. The things that are reviewable, and I'll get into this more in the next slide, but
the things that are reviewable, that are subject to review to the design standards, it's based on a permit being required. If I went to go do a roof, if I wanted to replace my roof, well, that requires a permit. It required a permit before the design standards were approved, and it still requires a permit. Before the design standards were approved, if I wanted to replace my roof, I had to submit my application and all the associated information, what kind of roof, all those kinds of things to get my approval and get a building permit for the roof. When the design standards were approved, you still have those two parts, but you now have this part where you had to get a certificate of appropriateness, which means you go down to the building safety department and they would look up your address and they'd say, wait a minute, you're in the downtown Amarillo design district, you need to go up to planning and get approval before I can sign off on your roofing permit. You would bring that same information, if you're doing a roofing permit, for example, I would need the same exact information that they would need downstairs to give you your permit. I would look at it, there's composition shingles over there, there's wood shingles, there's tile, there's all kinds of there's a variety of roofing materials, and as long as it was consistent or in character with other roofs around there, all I would do is sign off on it, you go down and get your permit. So that's really the only other step that is required. Depending on what you're doing, I may need different information. I may need, new construction obviously is going to require more information than a roofing permit, something like that. But in general, whatever you need to get your building permit is really all you would need to submit for your certificate of appropriateness. So I just wanted to point that out. And then don't run off when you see it. This is basically what I tried to do here is when we're talking about, we brought up last commission, how do these standards affect single family properties? I think it's important to remember that there are single family properties within the, the smaller single family neighborhood district that I showed you at the beginning. There's single family properties in there, but there are single family homes kind of sprinkled in the entire district. There's some also in the larger park. Yeah, around Elwood Park and north there, east of there. So when you talk about doing something, whatever you may choose to do or not do, but if you choose to do something with single family residential properties, I think it's important to remember that it will affect all of it, not just the part in that single family neighborhood. But what I tried to do is show, if it's a single family property in the larger district, the downtown Amarillo urban design, the larger district, the smaller single family district design, or the single family design district, and then also tried to give you some sense of a comparison of what would be required for a typical single family home anywhere else in the city that's owned single family. So, basically the design standards require review of projects for new construction, any improvements or changes to the walkway or the sidewalk area within the right-of-way, the landscaping within the right-of-way, and the building edge, or what's commonly the exterior of the building.
And for that means physically changing that building edge, changing the shape of an exterior wall, making a new penetration in a wall, something to that effect. It's not a normal maintenance type activity. It's not painting, siding, etc.
Yeah, and when I get down here, I make sure that we're still aware of that. Remember, we're not talking about painting. Again, it's important to remember that it's permit based. If I wanted to replace my front door, I don't need a permit to replace my front door. So, things like that aren't. But if it requires a permit, then those are things that are going to, trigger review. So, it'd be required in the larger design district. It'd be required for those things, except for the sign, because we really don't, in general, allow the signs in the single-family district. business signs. But in the typical single family, there is a review required here. But again, it's important to remember you're going to need to have you're going to have to get a permit, which requires review of your project anyway. For new construction, sidewalks in and of themselves don't require permits, but if it's new construction, a sidewalk is required, so it's part of that permit review.
Like if you dug up a sidewalk and repoured it or whatever, what would happen?
You dug up a sidewalk
Yeah, you already had.
and didn't replace it?
No, you replaced it. Did you have to pull a permit?
No. Right now, no, we don't. We have standards and it's required, but we don't require a permit at this time for a sidewalk.
So, but if you went back, the sidewalk would have to be 7 foot instead of 4 foot?
Yeah, if you pulled up, say if you had a 4-foot sidewalk and you were in the larger design district and you pulled it up for some reason and you wanted to replace it, then it would fall under that 7-foot requirement. But one of the things that we want to point out is that it's reviewable. And if you're one of those single family homes and and there's 4 feet sidewalk on both sides, there's another house on each side of you,
Right.
there's no way that we would tell you that, well, you need to have a 7-foot sidewalk that connects to 2 4-foot sidewalks. So, again, and I know this isn't black and white, and I know and it gets uncomfortable sometimes, but those are the kind of things that you just kind of have to use logic, to apply to.
Well, then where would that apply? Just on a new home, or, I mean, how would you do it? I mean,
Generally in the commercial zones is where you're going to have that. In the central business district down here.
Yeah, they're 7 foot, but not in the residential. That's what I'm asking.
And in that carve out piece, or that red piece down in the low left corner, it's 4 feet. 4 feet, which is the same as across the rest of the city.
So the walkway standards, that's one of the main issues that we hear a lot. When you talk about the walkway standards, that's where you're talking about the sidewalk requirement, the pedestrian light requirement, and the tree requirement. So, but it's only required. Those elements are only required for new construction or conversion of a vacant building to entirely new use. It's been vacant for more than a year, where you redo the outside. You're converting that use of that building to something entirely different. So new construction or that conversion would kick in what we call the walkway improvements, which would include a sidewalk, street trees, and pedestrian lights. If you're in the larger district, the sidewalk, again, is in general 7 feet. You're required to plant a tree every 25 feet and have a pedestrian light installed every 50 feet.
How much are these lights that we keep talking about?
I think the standard we charge is like $3,400
Per light?
per light.
It's supposed to be some good looking lights.
They voted for.
Is that gold trim or?
No.
It's blue.
For the smaller single family districts, it is important to know, because this has come up quite a bit also. These standards, these walkway improvements do apply in that smaller single family district. It only applies to new construction and the conversion of a vacant building, but it does apply to so if somebody raised the way the standards are today, if somebody had a vacant lot over in the smaller single family district, or if they demolished a house and built a new house, they would be subject to these standards.
Well, if the trees are already there,
A lot of them.
yeah.
How wide are most of those lots?
Well, the blocks are 300 feet long, and there's usually about 10 lots on each block.
Got 30 by 50 or something.
They're bigger than 30-foot lots.
Maybe,
Well,
yeah.
If you went by,
I would guess that they're somewhere around 80 feet, 60 to 80
We
feet.
can have that answer directly.
I can get that answer really quick.
now is this over in the Eccles, or are you saying, what are you talking about over there? Okay. I
Yeah,
bet they're
there's-
not.
Truly,
You think they're
one of
80?
the biggest differences is what y'all are discussing now. That is the requirement for the street trees and for the pedestrian
But
But that's only if somebody tore something down, building it's new construction.
So it wouldn't even apply to a lot of people. It wouldn't apply to the majority of people.
No, it would be rare that it was initiated.
And conversion of a vacant building is not a home, a residence. It's been vacant for over a year, and it's simply being somewhat remodeled to be a residence.
It would have to be a house that's been vacant for more than a year, number one. The second part of that is it would have to be converted to something other than a
Than a
residence.
house.
So if it became a residence again,
It's fine.
1.5.
Are there any questions about that part? Because that's a big part, and a lot of that, so there's been some things that have been said that, that aren't quite correct, and I just wanted to try to make that clear that, first of all, they are required, but it's only in these circumstances. As far as the typical single family, in other parts of the city, yes, a sidewalk is required, but we don't require landscaping, and we don't require the pedestrian.
so on the lighting then, probably on that size of the lot, it's only taking one light. That's only if they convert it or if it's new construction.
Kind of depends on where the light is on the lot next to you. I mean, if it is,
Well,
depends.
that's not the case.
Maybe a lesson to, you be the first one on your block to get your light.
Well, I think it points out, in a fully developed neighborhood, and predominantly all of that area is fully developed, any changes that would trigger that are realistically going to be few and far between, and they're going to be scattered over time.
Well, and anybody's tearing something down and building new construction, they're gonna wanna do something. They're not gonna just
Yeah, they're
spend that
spending
kind of
money anyhow.
Yeah, they're gonna be nice.
And the intent of this is, in a lot of other areas you have, when you have redevelopment occurring, sometimes developers go in and buy a block, and they'll rebuild, and so, if that would be the chance to, get that streetscape, along that one complete block or something like that. And that's kind of the intent there. The intent was really never to be, this single family owner, you need to put in a light, because your light would maybe be the only light in 3 blocks or something like that. It's more for the redevelopment type development.
And if a particular landowner had an unusual configured lot or broad frontage and got into a jam or inequity on the lot requirement, that's why we have variance and waiver provisions built into this. You can go through in this case and
Say, really, this is,
see if you do it. Right, there's some relief available here in the right circumstances.
Other standards that are, because that single family design district, the smaller one, they have some other design standards that are particular to that residential neighborhood that don't apply to the larger district. So I wanted to kind of mention those also in the same type of format. You have exterior changes, again that includes, or it excludes paint. It's based on permits, building permits being required. In the DOD, in the larger district, the changes have to be in character with the building, and the business center, the urban center, the urban look, that kind of thing. It's a little bit different in the single family district where the focus is on the neighborhood, not the business core. It's more particular to the neighborhood, that any exterior changes would be reviewed, and what the focus would be on is looking to see if those changes were consistent with not only the building but with the neighborhood. In the typical single family area, it would be a part of the building permit review if it was new construction. Otherwise, you're just subject to the same permit requirements that you would be anywhere, roofing permits, those kinds of things. So there's not that consistency portion to the rest of the city. Fencing in the larger district, the fencing needs to be of a quality material, and there's different ways you can do it, wrought iron, masonry, or masonry and wrought iron. But basically that, and I'm sure you remember the chain link, the razor wire, the security fencing, those kinds of things are not allowed in the larger downtown design district. In the single family district, we amended that to apply just the normal city standards. So it's not the same in the single family neighborhood. If you want to put up a wood picket fence, if you want to put up a chain link fence, you're just subject to the normal city standards for residential fencing. So that's what's required in the single family district, same as it is citywide for single family. The roof has to be in the larger district, has to be in character with the building. In the single family design district, consistent with the others in the neighborhood, the neighborhood area. And in the single family, in the rest of the city, again, it would just, if you wanted to change a roof, you just need to get a roofing permit, and there would be no consistency type of requirement. Setbacks. We really don't address that in the larger district because most of that is commercially zoned, and there aren't really any setbacks in the commercial districts. In the single family district design boundary, we do mention that the front setback has to be consistent with the prevailing setback on the block. So if you had new construction or if you had an addition or something like that, it would need to be somewhat be consistent with the prevailing setback on the block. It wouldn't really stick out, something like that. In the typical single family standards, we'd also have a setback requirement. It's usually 15 feet. Some of the lower density residential districts it's 25 feet, but in the greater densities it's 15 feet, which is probably what I would guess. It's zoned multifamily, but I would guess almost every house over there has a 15-foot setback, basically. The driveways a driveway really isn't addressed in the downtown urban design district. In the single family, we put in there that the drive needs to be consistent with the others in the neighborhood. Specifically, that's talking about most of the driveways are either single lane to a setback garage or a detached garage, something like that. Occasionally, it might be a little wider than that. What that's an example of what that would prohibit is if somebody wanted to make their front yard a parking spot, and so it would not, that would be subject to review and probably would be recommended to not be allowed.
What about parking on the grass? A lot of people I see around town park on the grass, use it as a parking spot.
Where?
Now the design standards,
Sit out there in Wolfville?
Greenways. Greenways?
I don't remember seeing that. Brothers does not prohibit that.
They
Huh?
don't prohibit it. But you can if you want.
And neither do the design standards. It just says you can't turn your front yard into a parking lot by way of asphalt or concrete.
Couldn't pave it.
Couldn't pave it for parking.
Not
If you
in
want
your
to park on
cover
the grass,
space.
then you
No.
As far as the rest of the city for a single family, typical standards, we require 2 off-street parking spaces. You can do that however you want to. It can be a long single drive, it can be a double wide, it can be a circular drive. It only, and back here, or right after that, I follow that up with off-street parking. Parking lots have to be landscaped in the larger district. The driveway or the garage needs to be, again, consistent with the prevailing, use in the neighborhood. And typically in the other parts of town, we just require 2 off-street parking spaces minimum. We don't have a maximum. So if you wanted to make your entire yard a parking lot, you could do that if you wanted.
But not paved.
It just came in my head right there. Something that also that really, a lot of these things are addressed by deed restrictions in some neighborhoods.
You could also.
We don't get into the enforcement of deed restrictions, but some of these would be.
I thought you couldn't do asphalt drives anymore out in the city.
It has to be concrete or a material like concrete. There's different ways you can do that.
Okay.
That's more of a Scott McDonald question.
Okay.
But you have to have a paved, the word is actual paved. Your driveway has to be paved, and there's some concrete, and there's some mix type stuff that you can use that's acceptable. As far as height, it's unlimited in the larger district. There is a 2-story maximum in the single-family urban design district, and typical in a single-family zone, there's a 2-story maximum also. So, I know that's a lot, but I just tried to give you some sense of what's required in the larger district for single-family residences, the actual single-family neighborhood district that's defined as compared to the rest of the city. So,
Average lot size is 55 feet wide by 140.
I appreciate it. I think that tonight it's a hearing, and we will hear, and we will listen. We will not debate, because everyone has had the information for months, and hopefully everyone knows the standards by now.
One has at their place a assembly of material that we received mainly today.
That's kind of amazing.
So anyway, I was just going to say that we will listen to them, and we will take down the notes, as Mr. Atkinson said, and we will come back with maybe some recommendations to take it away, to amend it, to keep it the way it is. So this is not a debate for tonight. This is a hearing, and we want to hear from everyone.
And the public's going to be allowed to have input.
Oh, absolutely.
What will the rules be for that?
3 minutes. We'll have 3 minutes, and again, we won't debate, and hopefully questions have already been answered. If there are, we want to hear what, yes or no, why they want it, why they don't, and why they think it's important that we take it away or leave it. And, there may be 1 or 2 questions that have never been asked, but I can't imagine what they would be.
And
Kelly's going to go over it. He's going to review this like he did with us, and hopefully answer some questions right then.
So he will be responding, he'll have the opportunity to respond
He
to the
can,
3-minute
or-
presentations to explain, clarify.
Yeah, but we hope it won't,
Is that what
we
you're
hope
thinking?
it'll just be.
How was your presentation, Kelly? I was checking.
However long that was, I can make it.
Did you want to order pizza now?
No, I just was worried about my ADD kicking in.
I can make it a lot quicker.
No, I think that's really good.
It already has.
Hey, no disrespect on this deal, but Marcus, can you address this United Nations Agenda 21? I mean, I don't know anything about that. I've heard this over and over again. I would like to address this with the crowd, for real. I'm
Generally, sure.
we don't even know what it is. We're not a part of it. I don't. Yeah, listen to
Okay,
it.
well,
Still, we're not a part of that.
Do y'all have any questions before we go out there for Kelly? If not, we'll have a hearing tonight.
And
And,
we do need a brief closed session.
right, any questions for Kelly? Great.
Great job, Kelly.
Thank
I
you so
understand it
much.
all now.
Thank you.
This is really nice, Kelly, thanks a lot. I like this little grid.
It makes it easier to understand.
It does.